All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I work in Keeper Security's marketing team. I'm joined today by Travis Griffith, who's one of Keeper Solutions engineers, and he's going to be perfect for our topic today on ransomware attacks. So anyone who works in IT is familiar with those attacks. They happen constantly. You'll see them in the news, and no matter how secure your IT infrastructure really is, all it takes is one person, like just one employee, to make a small mistake that could put an entire organization at risk. So what we're going to do today is look at a few examples of recent ransomware attacks, see how they happened, and then look at easy and cost-effective ways that can be taken to avoid falling prey to these. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat. I'll be fielding those and try to answer everybody live. But if not, we'll get back to you shortly after this webinar. And then, Travis, I might interrupt you with a few questions, but the floor is yours.
Sounds great. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. All right, yeah, let's go ahead and get into our use cases. So welcome everyone. First off, we're going to talk about Internet of Things devices. So what are Internet of Things devices? Those would be smart refrigerators, smart TVs, smart watches, etc. So these devices are typically connected behind your firewall on your home network or on your corporate network. There actually have been use cases where hackers have gotten into corporate networks with these types of devices. So think of like a thermometer on an aquarium was one of the wildest examples that I had heard of. And so these are the world's greatest cybersecurity risk. And essentially, it's a good idea to be mindful of these, and if they do have password protection available on them, to make sure you're using a password manager to generate that password. 68% of all security breaches include the human element. So hackers like the path of least resistance, and the human element is exactly that. So user error, the use of stolen or recycled credentials. Keeper actually has a really good system for detecting those types of attacks. It's called Breach Watch, to find your credentials out on the dark web. We use the most powerful database of recovered credentials in the world for that. And then misuse and abuse of privileged credentials. So a case for that would be, someone is granted more privileges than they need and they make a huge mistake. Social engineering, obviously as a result of these previous mistakes. So these are things that Keeper can help to avoid in terms of your users. In a lot of cases, you can set it up in a way that they never see their password. So there's not really a way for them to give it to anyone through social engineering if you want to go to that level. Insecure remote connections, that another case for that would be our connection manager. And again, with our connection manager, you would be logging into a privileged session without seeing the username and password. So again, what they don't know, they can't give out to a person who's trying to trick them. Lack of visibility into problems like hard-coded credentials. Now, hard-coded credentials, an example of that would be an application that your DevOps team has programmed, and it's using a database password, and that database password has not been changed in 15 years, but people have been looking at it and using it for 15 years. Now, talking about the wasted labor when it comes to managing passwords, essentially 11 hours are wasted every year resetting passwords per employee, and 50% of all help desk calls are password related. And then $70 is the average cost for a business to reset one password. So essentially, you can take care of all this much quicker, and you can implement stronger security factors. Like, for example, if your users are logging into Amazon Web Services with just a username and password today, they could log into Amazon Web Services with the username, the password, and the two-factor code, and all of it could be automatically filled in for them, and it would be much quicker than the way they're doing it now. So let's talk about a few of our use cases for security breaches. Let's talk about the Atlassian data breach. So essentially what happens is, number one, they stole employee credentials, and then they use those credentials to access third-party vendor data. So they were able to grab employee records, sensitive employee data, and then office building floor plans. Now, so what's the end result of that? Well, you have to think of the worst people in the world when you're talking about these data breaches. So when you say, what would the worst people in the world do with my employee data? What would they do with my floor plans? Making threats, stealing people's identities, those types of things. Absolutely something that you want to avoid. That can be avoided when you use Keeper Security, something similar that has a very powerful control over that information. So let's talk about supply chain attacks in conjunction with that. They're targeting the organization through their third-party vendors in the supply chain, right? And you've seen these types of breaches with some of our competitors. Keeper has never been breached, so obviously we're a clear choice in that regard. We're hosting everything with Amazon Web Services, so everything is under our control. We don't use any third-party vendors in our chain. Now, if you're needing to share with third-party vendors in a secure manner, Keeper has a way to do that with our password manager. So it's not just a password manager. You can upload files to your vault, and you could share files securely. So anything that you feel might compromise your organization that you need to share with a third party, you can share that out with a secure encrypted link. And that link is good on one device only for the time frame that you set. 98% of organizations felt the impact of cybersecurity breaches in their supply chain. So it's crucial to use Keeper to avoid exposing anything through email as far as sharing to third-party vendors and such. And again, they prey on the third-party vendor vulnerabilities. So you would probably want to encourage your vendors to use a password manager, preferably Keeper, because our security model, if you dig into our security model, you'll find out how superior it is. Anyway, so let's talk about our next data breach, the MoveIt data breach. And basically what happened here is they hacked a server and they exploited a 0-day vulnerability. So what is a 0-day vulnerability? It's basically an undiscovered flaw in an application or operating system, or it's a gap in the security, and there's no defense or patch because the software maker has no idea about it, right? So they injected some malicious code into the database, and they use that code to move an endpoint, an application endpoint, to steal database content. So think of this as a fire hose, and through this fire hose, there's thousands of records, database records traveling through this fire hose. They just move that fire hose so that all the data is flowing to them through that fire hose. And of course, it affected hundreds of companies because all the companies that are making inquiries to that endpoint are now feeding that data. So that's a scary concept with API keys, which is, something that we protect with privileged access, part of our PAM solution. We can protect those API keys and protect against SQL injection attacks, etc. Now, phishing attacks, let's talk about those for a minute. They target victims and they want them to reveal sensitive information such as passwords or credit card numbers. Now, how do they do this? Essentially, they're going to apply pressure, and they'll pretend to be someone important, someone who could fire you. So, hey, you're going to get fired. Provide me, the password that allows me to get into the accounting servers and take over all the credit cards. It's a very scary threat. It can be very expensive, and these occur every 40 seconds in the United States. And again, they use social engineering and they use pressure in order to get someone to click on a link. Keeper protects against that, and we'll see that later in the demo, where Keeper essentially sets up the correct link. And so if someone's trying to go to the wrong link and fill in the credentials, Keeper's not going to fill in the credentials. So now, looking at our next use case, the Corridor Crew data breach. So this is a YouTube channel, and they were hacked. Their employee credentials were stolen because of a weak password, and then their access to their YouTube channel was removed. All their videos were deleted. You can actually watch this video if you search for Corridor Crew hacked. You'll be able to find this video. I'm not going to play it, but if you watch it, it's very emotional. It'll show you what it feels like to be hacked. It's like a car crash in slow motion, and you can see just in this image the people putting their hands on their heads. It's very aggravating because someone just literally took control of their business, and they thought they were going to go out of business, and they thought that the owners of the company thought that they weren't going to have any revenue stream. The employees thought they weren't going to have any jobs, and fortunately, they were very, very lucky to be able to recover everything and take back control. But you really don't want to be in that position. Password spraying attacks. Cyber criminals will use a set of credentials to attempt to gain access to several accounts at once. Now, nearly 2/3 of internet users will reuse the same password. What we call this, a lot of our clients call this, is the Academy Award philosophy, because they create such a strong password that they think they should get an Academy Award for it. And they say, well, it's so good, it needs to be used everywhere. And then hackers will prey upon this. If a hacker finds out you've used a password in more than one place, they'll pursue it for weeks or months, depending on how they view you as a target. And they're extremely persistent. It's what they do, all day, every day. So password security challenges for organizations: lack of awareness, employees' resistance to change, poor password hygiene practices. Now, these are things that Keeper can help you with. We do have, for example, a platinum support plan where we can help with employee training, employee adoption. Every corporate account gets a family plan with 5 free vaults that your employees can use to store their personal credentials. So Keeper's not just protecting your corporate credentials, we're also helping your employees to protect their credentials and to practice better password hygiene. So a lot of things that we can do to help your adoption. That's going to reduce your attack surface by roughly 82%. Steps to prevent ransomware, essentially using an encrypted vault. So Keeper encrypts everything down to the record level, and that includes any files that you upload. So where we had that third-party data breach earlier that we talked about, essentially this would allow you to share even to outside vendors or third-party vendors securely without emailing something out and potentially putting it in a plain text out throughout the web. Two-factor authentication integration. You can enforce two-factor on obviously the vault itself, but also you can see in this animation that we can store the two-factor codes right within the records, and you can see Amazon, it will autofill the two-factor code. And then if you're in a meeting and you share that credential to someone, they're not going to be texting you, asking you for the two-factor code. So there's a major convenience factor with Keeper as well. AI-powered autofill to recognize phishing websites. So in this case, they're on the correct website, so it does fill in the credential. But if I went to the incorrect website, Keeper will recognize that it's not on the correct website. And so the credential is not going to pop up to autofill because, again, it's probably several letters off of the domain that we're supposed to be on. Secure sharing, there's a lot of options here. One of the things that our clients really like is the fact that you can integrate your identity provider with Keeper. So that might be Okta. And then you can, Okta or Azure, your Okta push groups or your Azure security groups can be brought over into Keeper. And what that will do is it'll allow you to link those groups, those security groups, to the shared folder. So you can see right here, it's showing that we're linking an individual to a shared folder. So, but you could, again, share with an entire team and then have Okta or Azure Entra manage the membership of that shared folder for you. You can also share at the individual credential level and the one-time share, that I talked about earlier. The IT admin console, where you can monitor the strength of the passwords and enforce best practices. Now, this is something that we help you with. So it's just basically you coming to us and saying, hey, here's what my security posture is. And we can kind of walk you through how you should set up your role policies. That's what governs the Keeper experience. We give you a really strong explanation, and we have really good tutorial videos in terms of how to set up the admin. It's incredibly easy. I've seen companies with 8,000 users deploy Keeper in as little as an hour and a half. So there's no reason to delay the password manager for your organization. But with that said, we have a special offer for you, and I'll go ahead and turn it back to my colleague, Adrian.
Yeah, no, thank you, Travis. And yeah, if anyone is interested in getting a personal free password manager subscription, sign up for a demo at keeper.io/webinar using a professional email. Can get you set up with a demo and get you set up with a free personal plan for 3 years. So that's a good way for you to learn more about Keeper. But one thing I was going to add, Travis, when you talked about MFA, was there was a stat that came out in a Verizon report that says that 99.9% of data breaches could have been prevented with the use of MFA. And one
Yeah.
of the coolest things about Keeper, like you just showed, is how easy it is to integrate MFA in the vault. And so, yeah, that's number one tip: is make your employees use MFA. That's going to save you from a lot of trouble. But a few questions for you, Travis. So there is an emergence of browser-based password managers, like from Google, Apple, you name it. Are they safe and are they good enough?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the browser-based password managers, people generally like to use them because they're easy, but most of our clients disable them because they're not safe. So it's very easy to grab the credentials from that device. And as a hacker, if I got into a local network, and if you can grab them from one device, all you need is an authoritative credential like an Active Directory domain admin, and you could just spider out and go through the network and just grab credentials. So long story short, I mean, let's say you have 50 computers on a network, the hacker could go out and grab credentials from all 50 of those computers. They could have 10,000 credentials at their disposal very quickly.
Right, and more so than just from a security standpoint, it's also harder to share with another device or with employees, while having a password manager helps to make that a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
And then when we talk about single sign-on, Travis, are there security risks there?
Yeah, single sign-on. The first thing you think of is probably the phrase "putting your eggs all in one basket." But you have these kind of legacy systems like government entities that are going to be using passwords. They're going to be using passwords for quite some time, and there's just a lot of entities that we depend on for data that you're really not going to get around that. However, there is the evolution of passwords, passkeys, and so whatever the case is, you're going to need the password manager to manage it, whether it's a password or a passkey, just to make sure that you have retention of that security credential. Because that one of the things that we have is the vault transfer. That's very popular. It's a way for the organization to reclaim all the records that an employee had when they leave the organization. So just as one example.
Right, and yeah, and you brought up passkeys. Do you think passkeys are going to get adopted quickly?
Yeah, they are. You're seeing, well, the market leaders. So you have companies like Adobe and Google and Apple and such that are already using the passkeys. They're based on the web authentication standard. It's a public-private key encryption, and so when you log in with a passkey, you're just passing your public key over to that website securely, and it's a crazy easy to do. So when we've shown that to our clients, they're extremely excited about it because you can share a passkey and then unshare it, and you've literally removed someone's access. There's no way they're going to memorize that passkey. In Keeper, in our vault, you're not even going to see it. So yeah, it's a great way to share access even to an outside vendor without them ever seeing anything.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, we're coming close to our allotted time slot here. So thank you so much, Travis. This was awesome. And again, if you'd like to learn more about Keeper, book a demo with our team, and you can get a free 3 years personal plan. So, but if you have any questions that we haven't been able to answer, we'll get back to you shortly. But thank you again, and have a great day.
Yeah, thanks everyone.